that need to be discussed?
Yes, I've got two. First, I have a clerical correction.
Sure, go ahead.
In Summit's landowner list, I think it was June 30th, they have my zip code wrong. They have it listed as 50171, and it's 20171.
Okay, anything else?
Yes, then also I would like to strike attachment 26 from my testimony. That I had provided two alternate routes in my testimony. The first one is most preferable, and I had the second one as a backup. From the testimony from Summit people, specifically Brian Loop, my alternate route is perfectly feasible. So I would like to keep alternate route 1 and just remove alternate route 2 from the testimony.
All right, so just to make sure, sir, we're on the same page. Attachment 24, I believe, or no, that says, okay, let's see. Attachment 25 looks like that's a proposed alternate route number 1. Is that's the alternate route that you would like to be considered if necessary?
Yes, that's right.
All right, and so then you'll be striking attachment 26, proposed alternate route 2, correct?
Yes.
All right, very good. Anything else?
That's it.
Okay. With that, I will offer exhibits 75 through 80, as well as 624.
Are there objections?
No objections, Your Honor.
With no objections, the board will admit.
Sir, I will tender you for cross-examination questions.
Mr. Taylor?
Thank you. Mr. Gadsby, I'm Wally Taylor. I represent the Sierra Club. First of all, who actually owns this property? Do you own it yourself, or is it through some sort of entity?
This is an LLC. It's my sister and I are equal members. I'm the manager, but otherwise we're equal members. And this was formed when my dad passed away in 2020, 3 years ago. Actually, it was formed a little before that, but as of 2020, my sister and I are the two owners.
Okay. And do you see the map on the screen?
Yes, I do.
And the red parcels that are form sort of a stair step, is that the total of your land that's being impacted?
Yes.
And does that route of the pipeline, the white line, appear as you understand the route to be?
Yes, it does.
Okay. When was the first time you talked to any agent or representative from Summit?
I first got the notice, I think it was in October of 2021. The notice everybody got. And I attended a virtual meeting in early October 2021. And I think it was shortly after that we kept getting calls from someone wanting to survey our land. I had been advised by the neighbors that I really needed to talk to him because it was in my best interest to try and work with him and get a better route, and that this was a done deal, and I really better treat Summit well and get them on my side.
Pardon me, so your neighbors were telling you this?
Yes.
Do you know why they were telling you this?
Not sure.
Okay.
Actually, it was one neighbor that was on it at the time. I heard it from many neighbors following that.
Okay. So then what happened?
So we had talked a little bit. I had said I would agreed that he could survey on our property. This was around December, January. I hadn't really given official permission, but he he called several times and finally, assuming he has permission, can we do this, this, and this? And I said, okay, I'll give you permission. I think this was in an email. You cannot use ATV vehicles. You have to be on foot. You have to use the access paths. You can't go anywhere near the buildings, things like that. I don't think they surveyed at that time. Right about then, January, February of 2022, after doing a lot of research, hearing from other people, I decided this was really against my constitutional rights. The Fifth Amendment guarantees me the right from somebody else seizing my property unless there is public benefit, public utility to this. And there was not. And at that point, my sister and I, my wife, we talked about it. We decided we're not going to go through with this. This is ridiculous. There's no reason we should have to. We don't want this pipeline. At the time, we were starting to hear about Satarsha and everything, how dangerous it could be. We decided we're not going to do it. So I told the agent, and I think this was M. Van Collada at the time, I told him, if you're going to survey, you got to do it by March 1st, 2022. After that, we no longer allow surveys, and we have no interest in signing these at this point.
Pardon me, did they send you a written notice that they wanted to survey?
Later on, they did send me something certified, which I rejected. We didn't want to have anything to do with them. Yeah. So I had never given them official permission after that point. It wasn't until, I think, June or July of 2022, they had gotten in contact with their tenants. Our tenants had told me that they wanted to survey. So I replied, no, you're not allowed to survey. I referred them to our lawyer, Brian Jorde, who we had hired before then. I said, we do not allow it, and, that's that. And they did survey. Several weeks after that, they dug several deep holes, roughly a foot in diameter and at least 18 inches deep.
Where?
And they left.
Where did they dig the holes?
This was, there were several along the main entryway to one of the parcels. So it's right where you would be walking. They're very close to it or driving. We have a neighbor who has horses, and if she had ridden her horse through there, the horse didn't see it. Horse could break a leg from something like that.
So, after this discussion about the survey, did you ever talk to any Summit agents or representatives about an easement?
No. But at that point, I stopped all communication with them, never agreed to it.
Okay. And so I take it then you never talked to them about an alternate route?
No, I did not. I did present an alternate route in my testimony, pre-filed testimony, which I have been assured that everybody is familiar with it. The world has access, so Summit should know about it. I was surprised to hear in the testimony of Eric Shavanik, I think was his name, who kept saying, no, I've never seen this alternate route before, time after time, and yet these are all filed in the pre-filed testimony. We're assured that if it's in the pre-filed testimony, it's part of the official record, and it will get noticed. Anyway, my alternate route is in the pre-filed testimony.
And you said in your preliminary comments that you were withdrawing your attachment 26, which was a second alternate route based on Brian Luke's testimony. What about his testimony caused you to withdraw that alternate 2?
At one point in his testimony, I think it was Mr. Meyer, said to the effect that bends and turns in the pipe are bad, right? And Brian Luke said, absolutely not. Bends and turns are fine. They do not degrade the reliability of the pipeline. And that, plus the fact that in Minnesota, I think it's the Otter Tail Creek line, they have many right angle turns. They go to the north then to the west, then to the south, then to the west, which leads me to believe that right turns are okay. And my alternate Route 1 does push the pipeline to the edge of my property, which is a lot more convenient to me. And it was also would be more convenient to my neighbor to the east, because it would push it further away from our house. And it would continue going south pretty much on its present course. So on my alternate route, I did propose having two 45-degree turns rather than a single 90-degree turn. So there's a 45-degree turn and then roughly 300 feet of pipeline and then another 45-degree turn. So not truly a 90-degree turn. It should, if there's any issue there, it should mitigate it somewhat. But that route would be a whole lot more desirable to us if our constitutional rights are not upheld and this goes through, in violation of everything that this country stands for. I'm forced to take this pipeline. My alternate Route 1 would definitely be preferable over the route that they have provided, which goes diagonally through our most productive parcel. The CSR values are between 88 and 95. There are no interruptions, no waterways on those upper two parcels. So this would be better for everyone around, I think.
And but you never proposed this to Summit, correct?
That's right. I don't intend to sign, so I don't see a reason to.
Okay, fair enough. As you look on the map, it appears there are some structures fairly close to the pipeline route, either on your property or near your property. Can you describe what those are?
Yes, so starting at the north side, the northeast side, directly across 290th Avenue, that is our neighbor, the Carpenters, and that house is occupied there. As it sits now, I've measured it about 550 feet from the pipeline.
Okay.
With my proposed alternate route, it would be about 700 feet from the pipeline, a gain of about 150 feet. Still a very bad situation, but not as bad. As you go further south along 290th Avenue, on the left side of the road, just past the affected parcel, just to the south of the last affected parcel, that is my grandparents' old home place. And that's part of our property as well. And we stay there from time to time during the year when we visit the property.
Pardon me, does anybody else live there?
No, not at this point.
Okay.
It's just used temporarily when we're out there.
And then right across the road to the west from your grandparents' house, what is that?
That is where my great-grandparents lived. And that is also where my wife and I are in the process of building a house. So we plan to move out there roughly next spring, summer, depending on how things go. We're building a house. We're very distressed that this pipeline has targeted us right about the time. We've been planning this for many years. Our parents all passed away 2019, 2020. We've got no more ties out east. We decided it's time to move to Iowa. And so now this.
Okay. Based on the proximity of those structures, do you have concerns about the safety of the pipeline?
Absolutely. From what I've heard from Navigator's plume model, I think they say something like 1,800 feet is the danger zone. I've done some modeling with Aloha to look at what's going on. And of course, this all depends on the size of the pipeline that they put in. Last I heard, it was supposed to be 10 inches, but I've heard from people, my neighbors to the north and south, that now it's 20 inches, and the easement says 24 inches. So being an engineer, I have to go with 24 inches, because that's probably what's going to get put in eventually. With a 24-inch pipe, using Aloha, our house that we're planning to build, which is 2,200 feet away from the present proposed pipeline, would still be in the yellow danger zone, or I call it yellow, 20,000 parts per million carbon dioxide in the event of a pipeline breach. Our neighbor to the north, the Carpenters, they would be in the red zone regardless. If anything bad happens up there, that's very bad for them. And I really can't, in good conscience, ever sign an easement for something like this, putting people in danger. Our neighbors to the west, directly to the west, there is another homestead there. They are not too far from the creek where this plume, where the carbon dioxide will probably go. They could be in danger as well, because we know that carbon dioxide flows like a liquid, and the creek is the lowest area, will likely flow to the creek, follow the creek to the west to the Little Sioux River, and our neighbors to the west could be in trouble as well.
Yeah. Where would the nearest emergency response personnel be if there's a rupture in the pipeline?
They do have an all-volunteer department in Dickens, which is about 2 miles to the north. That sounds good until you realize that they are all volunteer and there's not a whole lot of it left. If a call goes out, I'm sure they're very dedicated, but there aren't very many of them anymore. We had Dennis King, who is our neighbor, testify several days ago. He doesn't have much confidence that they would be able to come out and save us. And in any case, they would probably just put a blockade up to make sure that nobody else goes into the area.
Let me just clarify. When was the last time that you talked to any agent from Summit?
Probably February of 2022.
I think that's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Gruenhagen?
Thank you, Jan. Hi, my name is Chris Gruenhagen, and I represent the Iowa Farm Bureau. Mr. Gadsby, I have a few questions for you just to clarify some of your testimony. You testify about some of the historical crops that have been raised on this property. What is currently being raised on the row crop land?
Corn and soybeans.
Okay. And the grassed area, is that in pasture or CRP, or how is that being utilized?
Yes, there is an area with a creek. It is the two side-by-side parcels east-west. That creek has never been plowed. They've used it for pasture land for cattle in the past. Right now, they get hay there. My dad had always been so proud that we'd never plowed that area. It's great for wildlife. There's a lot of wildlife there. So my grandfather, my great-grandfather, they'd always set this aside as pasture land. The pipeline is going right through the best part of it, essentially. It's a wetland, lots of wildlife. Now, further to the west, it has been diverted through tiling or whatever, and it goes off to the west to the Little Sioux River. Not as concerned out that way. It's been diverted, not as sensitive. But we do not have that in CRP. My dad worked for the U.S. Department of Agriculture. He actually worked on setting some of the rules for CRP. He thought that would be a conflict of interest. And actually, I think he just didn't want anybody telling him what he could do with his property. He loved keeping it natural, but he didn't want to have to deal with it. And I think through conflict of interest, it would not have made sense for him to do that. At some point, we may decide to put it in CRP.
You also testified that you just mentioned again that there's a wetland near the creek. So first, I guess I'd ask, has it been delineated or determined to be a wetland by the Corps of Engineers or NRCS?
No, we've never had anybody do that.
Okay. Have you had any expert look at that and designate it?
No.
Okay. So do you know where the wetland is actually located at?
Well, sure, I've been through there. It's just following the creek, pretty much from 290th Avenue, maybe 3/4 of the way down through those red parcels.
So you believe it's along the riparian area?
I guess you would call it that.
And how close to the creek, how far out does it go from the creek?
The sides are fairly steep, so I don't think it goes out very far.
And then the top 3 affected parcels, do you also own the remaining parcel of that section?
Yes, we do.
Okay. And so with your proposed alternate route, that's still going to be on your property then?
Yes.
Is that true? Okay.
Yep.
Could the staff pull up his direct testimony for me, please? And then go to page 261. Okay. This is the alternate route, I believe, that you identified
That's right.
earlier as being your preferred route. Toward the bottom, are we on 261? No, we're just flipping it. There we go. Toward the bottom of that map, there's a little bump out there.
Yes.
Is that bump out also on your property?
Yes, actually, we own 2 tiny parcels to the west, and so that bump out follows a 4-acre parcel that sticks out. Works out great. That way they can completely avoid the creek in that area, and they do have to cross it once further down when they rejoin the north-south route.
And so that bump out is the purpose of that is to avoid the creek. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Right.
Okay. And then where are you proposing the creek would be crossed?
If you go just south, the bump out, yeah, right where the hand is shown now, that's where it would cross.
Okay.
In addition, on this, on the document they have provided, they have the temporary easement on the west side and the north side of the route, which makes absolutely no sense. It should be opposite, so that the temporary easement is towards us, and that when Summit is finished with all this, we should be able to use that land against the temporary easement. If the temporary easement is against the property line, then we have a strip 50 feet or 100 feet, 150 feet wide across the pipeline that will probably be wasted. We'll probably never use it because I'm not going to feel comfortable having my tenants cross this pipeline all the time. Having that the pipe there means to get to that part of the property, they're going to have to go around the north and all the way down, half a mile or a mile, or it's just impossible. It's very inconvenient. There's no way.
Okay, since you mentioned that, I guess I'll just ask you about that now. Why are you concerned about traveling over top of it after the construction is complete and it's buried?
Just being an engineer, I know things shift around. I know that every time you cross over it, especially if the equipment is heavy, there's always a chance of disturbing something and having a breach. And it's a ticking time bomb on our property. Who knows when it's going to happen? Anything man-made is going to fail eventually. I don't want anybody, my tenants, any of our neighbors, anybody going over that pipeline if there's any type of a risk to it. And so far, and from what I've heard from Summit, I really don't have any good assurance, A, that they know what they're doing. This is a lot of the firsts for them. They don't have a lot of experience with this. And B, that something is not going to shift on the land somewhere and cause a vulnerability point where when you go over it, boom, I just don't want to expose people in my employ to that.
So you're an engineer, so you're used to weighing risks, is what I'm hearing you say.
Yes.
Okay. And so, what would you view as the greater risk? Someone driving on the interstate for 3 hours versus traveling over top of the pipeline? Just trying to gauge the risk there.
Well, there's always a small risk whenever you do anything. So, yes, driving over the interstate has a little bit of risk. But if you have an accident, chances are you're going to be okay. You'll be off in the ditch. Your car will be destroyed. You'll probably be okay. Maybe slight injuries. If you're injured with a pipeline, that's it. You have no hope of waking up from it.
Okay. Could we go ahead and turn on the same document here to page 255? I believe these are your tile maps.
Yes.
And I think they speak for themselves, but can you identify which parcel that is? Which part of the property that is?
So this is the northern two parcels and then the creek to the south of it. And these tile maps were from tiling done in 2009, which is the only one we really have a record for. I know our tenants who've been with us for over 50 years have done other tiling before that. And in fact, there is another attachment I have that shows, that's a hand-drawn drawing, that shows in a little more detail where the older tile is, in addition to this.
Okay, we'll go to that in a second. And so is this all the tile that you're aware of on those two parcels?
With the exception of the additions, which is in the next one.
Okay, so let's go ahead and go to page 257 then. It was just 2 pages down. Is that the other one that you were referencing?
Yes.
Okay. And so which parcels does that represent there?
This is pretty much the same view that we just saw. Okay. So it's the top two going down to the creek.
Okay, the asterisk down there, is that to the north or south of the creek?
That is, I believe, to the south.
Okay. And so is the creek then south, and you can kind of see the red and the blue lines that kind of curve? Is that where does that follow the creek line?
Yes.
Okay, and those lines are to the north of the creek?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. And are these all private tiles, or are they county tiles?
I'm not certain. Our tenant tells me that it does connect up with other tile lines going further west. I think these are all private here, but then they eventually do connect up with other tile lines.
Okay. And the blue lines are also tile on the map, is that true?
Yes, the blue lines are older ones that he drew from memory, and the red ones are the newer ones.
Okay. And so do you know what the diameter is of the blue ones at all?
I have no idea. I think they're fairly small. They said they were between 3 and 5 feet. Fairly small. There's nothing major in them.
Okay.
I don't think.
And then the asterisks there south of the creek, is that tile as well?
Yes.
And what does that connect to then?
I guess it must go to the northwest, connecting to that other tile line.
So does that go under the creek or across the creek there?
Not sure exactly.
Okay. And do you know how deep these tile may have been buried?
I think about 3 to 5 feet. They're fairly shallow.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And I just have one more question. Some of your parcels list a farm tenant and some of them don't. Do you have the same farm tenant for all of the properties?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Thank you.
Mr. Jorde for redirect. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see it. It was hiding behind the fence thing.
Thank you, Your Honor. Yeah, it tends to hide behind that post there. Mr. Gadsby, I just want to make sure I understand the alternative route. And Ms. Grunhagen asked 2 of my 3 questions, so this should be pretty quick. Can we go back to Exhibit 25? Actually, why don't we go back to the KMZ? And I apologize, Mr. Gadsby, this has been my problem, is trying to switch back and forth between looking at your exhibit and looking at the KMZ. The only question I had left on this, your proposed alternate route runs across the north edge of the 2 parcels, one in red and one in green, that we see on the screen right now, correct?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, and does your proposal involve moving that point where it crosses 290th farther north?
Yes, it would continue following the property line to the east until it goes diagonally northeast from that.
Okay, that's all I needed to clarify. Thank you.
Now, Mr. Jorde.
Sir, did you say that your neighbor's home will stay on that KMZ there? That your neighbor's home to the east of your northernmost targeted parcel is approximately 700 feet from the pipeline?
Actually, it's about 550 the way the pipeline is drawn now. Yes.
Okay, 550. And then you said later, after you ran the Aloha model, the publicly available software modeling tool, that your neighbors at 550 feet would be in the red zone, but you didn't quantify the parts per million that equates to a red zone.
Yes, that would be well above 40,000 parts per million.
Very good. And you were asked some questions about risk by Farm Bureau counsel and what you view as greater risks. When you make a decision to take your family on a trip, get in your car and go down the highway, are you doing that because someone has forced you to do it, or is that typically a choice you make?
It's usually a choice I made.
And if you want to engage in an activity that may have some risk to it, would you agree that the calculus is different when it's a choice you as an adult willingly, knowingly make, understanding the potential risks, as opposed to having risks foisted upon you unwillingly?
Exactly. When I go out for a trip, there's usually some gain, some reason I want to go out for the trip, something in it for me. With a pipeline, there's nothing in it for me. This is like a bank coming to me and saying, here, we're giving you $100,000. This is a loan. Enjoy it. Oh, by the way, you owe $10,000 in liability on this forever. Not just 10 years, not just 20. This is forever. I have to continue to pay taxes every year. I have to worry about somebody hitting it. I can't do anything on my property near this route without checking with Summit first. My property loses 25% of its value, perhaps, from what I've heard from other testimony here. So my rent goes down. There's no upside to it. The only upside, if I do this, is right at the point of signing my payment. That's it. Forever after that, it's downside.
And the forever after downside, in your view, vastly outweighs any temporary blip in a one-time payment you might receive.
Yes, exactly.
All right, sir, I appreciate that. I don't have any further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Gadsby. We appreciate it. You're excused.
Thank you.
Okay. Next witness, Mr. Jorde, are they in the same location? How are we